Welcome to Off the Record, Personal Injury Litigation with Michael Kopsick.
Hello and welcome back to Off the Record, Personal Injury Litigation with Michael Kopsick. Michael is a trial-tested injury lawyer from Illinois who has handled everything from car crashes and slip and falls to complex construction and nursing home negligence cases. With more than 60 trials and thousands of depositions behind him, he brings a clear, honest view of how personal injury cases really work. I'm Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're talking about something almost every injured person wonders. Should you hire a big firm or a small firm? And what actually changes the outcome of your case? Welcome, Michael. It's good to see you again.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to see you as well.
So when someone is first searching for a lawyer after an injury, what do you see are the basic differences they should understand between hiring a large firm and hiring a smaller practice?
Yeah, it's such a great question, and it's one that I've grappled with, having worked in several big firms. At one time, I was working for the largest personal injury firm in Illinois, and now being on my own and being a solo practitioner with very little help on the side. It's always going to, of course, be up to the client, but really what I mean there is it's up to the client to decide what type of experience they want to have. I can tell you something that attorneys here at continuing legal education seminars, this is not just in Illinois, but across the country, the number one complaint of clients with respect to their attorney is that they don't communicate often enough, that they call the attorney and the attorney doesn't pick up, or they email the attorney and weeks go by without a response. I would typically say that when you have a solo practitioner, someone who is solely in charge of the cases that they are working on, and there's no paralegals and associates and partners and a chain of command that you have to worry about, communication with a smaller firm or a solo practitioner typically is much more manageable. The attorneys are much more communicative, and less communication falls through the cracks. Where you go with the larger firms, that's typically where we have multiple attorneys assigned to a case, a partner who's overseeing 2 or 3 associates, plus paralegals, plus support staff, plus secretaries, right? Plus interns and law clerks. It's very difficult oftentimes to communicate with an attorney who works for a larger firm. So communication is one of those things that clients have to decide on. But really there are several factors and they kind of all apply to different stages of the case.
Yeah, I mean, even at the very beginning, sometimes if you go for a really big lawyer, there's call centers, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, oftentimes if you call an attorney who is a billboard advertiser or, a bus advertiser in a big city, it's going to go straight to a call center. It's going to go to an intake center that is a third party hired by that big firm. So most times you're not even talking to an attorney on your first few phone calls. And then once the lead gets generated and once you pass kind of the test, so to speak, and you start to talk about the relevant factors of your case, that's when it will actually get to that firm or actually get to that attorney. And you bring up a great point. When you call an attorney to tell them about your case and to see if you have a case, the first voice I want to hear is an attorney, right? I don't want to hear a paralegal, as qualified as they probably are and as qualified as those individuals would be in a big firm. I want to speak to an attorney, and I'm pretty sure I want to talk to the attorney who's going to be handling my case, my depositions, and my trial. And that's where the smaller firm kind of comes into play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the amount of personal attention that you receive is going to be different between a high volume firm and a smaller operation. I mean, it's with anything. It's with any business. How do you think that affects the case or the relationship, especially during the early stages of a case?
It's such a good question, and it affects the case mightily. And the reason is this: when you are the sole attorney, when you are the only person who is reading the medical records, who are taking the depositions, who are speaking with the other attorneys, who are going into court and speaking to the judge, who are absolutely poring over medical records and medical bills of your client, and you're the only one to do all of those things, you have such an intimate knowledge of the case that is something that clients absolutely love, and they can tell when you get to trial and the facts of your case better than anyone. I think, again, of course, big firms and big shot attorneys who are partners in those firms, they're of course going to know the case and they're going to know it really well. But they are also relying on their associates and their paralegals throughout the case to get the tough work, kind of the grunt work that nobody wants to do, done. And I understand that model too. It's an efficient model. But again, when you have a case and you speak to an attorney and you want to figure out who's right for you, again, just something that I would think, just personally, is I would want someone who's going to be there from start to finish, from the very beginning intake call, from the very end, not to mention the personal relationship that you establish with the client throughout all of those communications. When you know your client and you know how they feel and you know what their opinions are, and when that matches up with your handle and your grasp of the facts, that's when a great case really comes together.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you kind of worry that your case isn't going to get the focus that it needs to with a bigger firm, because maybe they're spread thin. They take everything. Who knows? It's hard to say. Are there early signs that a client should pay attention to that would indicate that their case is probably not getting the focus that they would like to see?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things you've already mentioned is, who does the first call go to? It goes to a call center or it goes to a paralegal. You get your case signed up and you've gotten past that stage and you call your attorney and a paralegal calls you back. Or you call the partner on the file and a law clerk emails you back. Those are signs that, the attorney has gotten notification of the actual communication, but they have sent that back down the chain of command and say, hey, I've got too much going on. I don't have time to talk to my client. There's certain things that I do in my practice to absolutely guarantee that when a client reaches out to me, I speak to them, I communicate with them immediately. I have text messaging that goes to my monitor at work. My phone rings. I never turn my phone off. I never have anybody answering my phone. When I miss a call, if I'm in a deposition, I immediately email my clients back and let them know that I'm busy, but let them know that I am absolutely calling them back today, whatever day they call me, whether it's at 7 o'clock at night, whether it's at 6 a.m. I never let a call, a voicemail, or an email go beyond one day.
A lot of the larger firms might point to their size as a strength, as the resources that they have. Do you feel like that there's too much emphasis put on that? Does that really matter that much when it really comes down to it?
No, in a general sense, I don't think it matters. But there are outlying situations, of course,
Sure.
right? And I'll fully admit, if somebody is in a multi-defendant, multi-party accident involving death or paralysis, I really do think a big firm is probably best to handle those massive cases with massive implications. The reason being is when you have multi-party lawsuits and, dozens of depositions that you have to take, tens and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars that need to be spent, those big firms really do have appeal. And frankly, I probably would refer, clients that I get in those situations to bigger firms because I want to set them up for success. But the reality is that most of the cases, the vast majority of cases that are everyday personal injury cases, the car accidents, the slip and falls, the cases that are worth $50, $75, $100,000, $250,000, $500,000 even, cases against one defendant or two defendants. That again goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where you want the attorney there from start to finish. You want the solo practitioner who is going to intimately know the facts of your case. And there's only really outlying exceptions for when a big firm is needed. And mostly that's because of the resources and the finances that they can boast to a client.
You've seen lawyers from big firms and small firms present cases in court. What are some of the biggest differences you notice in how each side prepares, organizes, or even delivers the arguments in the case to the jury?
Yeah, it's typically something that you can notice in preparation. And, I can only really speak to defense firms who are kind of aligned in the big firm mentality, which is, partners at the top, associates at the bottom, and support staff everywhere in between. It's the level of preparation. It's when we're arguing motions prior to the trial happening, right? The most crucial part of actual trial preparation and getting to trial is figuring out what the judge is going to allow into the trial as admissible, and figuring out what the judge is going to block from the jury as inadmissible. And when you're arguing those motions, you have to know exactly what happened in the deposition. You need to know exactly what page number and line number you're citing to. You need to know exactly what the doctor wrote in the records and how that may have contradict the deposition that they just took 2 weeks ago. Oftentimes you see those larger defense firms, they have a great grasp of trials, and they have a great grasp of pleadings to discovery to litigation to the end result. But do they know the intimate facts of the case? That's where plaintiffs tend to win cases, is when you're prepared and when you know the file intimately and you go up against someone who doesn't. You are going to win those motions and ultimately win those trials more times than not.
We've all seen the billboards. We talked beforehand. I grew up in and around Chicago, so I probably know some of the ones you might reference if they're still around, that is, and there's some big ones here in Colorado. Do you think, is it just as simple as marketing that works for people, that they're like, well, if they're going to be putting up a billboard, they must be the best option out there? Or is it just the kind of the comfortability of going with the name brand?
Yeah, I think it's different strokes for different folks. And I can't fault someone for driving down the highway and seeing exactly what you're describing. A big fancy billboard with a 1-800-111-1111. That attorney, they probably are thinking, must have some money. They must be successful, and they must be great attorneys. And they might have money, in order to have that type of advertisement, but it doesn't ultimately equate to being a fantastic attorney. Oftentimes with those billboards, believe it or not, those are firms that hire an advertising agency where there's an attorney who's licensed to practice in that state, but they don't actually take cases and try cases. What they do is they collect all the referrals from the advertising business and they ship it out to different firms. So when you see those big billboard firms, when you see those huge digital advertising campaigns, or for instance, bus campaigns on the CTA bus in Chicago, more times than not, those are firms that collect referrals, ship out the cases, and never actually handle your case. It's the attorneys like me who get their cases through word of mouth and get their cases through other attorneys who know that I'm in litigation and that I like to try cases and that I succeed at trial. Those are the attorneys who are actually going to grab your case and hit the ground running, rather than some billboard company who hires a call center who refers out the case just so they can make money.
Have you had people come to you who were frustrated by previous lawyers that maybe bigger law firms?
I know this probably sounds contrived, but it's, every single day I get a phone call. This firm is not listening to me. This firm is not paying attention. This firm is not picking up my phone calls. This firm is not hearing me. And it's my job to listen and to hear my clients. And it's truly a tale as old as time. I wish it were different. And like I said, there are times and places for big firms, and I think they do phenomenal jobs, in many instances. As a matter of fact, the firms that I have worked for in the past, I have great respect and admiration for. But like you said, there are times where things can slip through the cracks, and clients can feel that right away. Clients are a lot smarter than a lot of attorneys want to give people credit for. They're real people with real feelings, and it doesn't take a lot to be able to resonate with a human being. It takes listening. It takes appreciating what they've gone through. It takes having some sympathy for that person. But ultimately, it just takes your time. And that's something that I've never had hesitation in spending on my clients and the communication with clients.
It's also a lot of times one of the, if not the worst thing people go through, if they've been injured, if they've been in just a horrible wreck that gives them, some sort of PTSD even, or just like there's so many different nuances to these cases. If you're not feeling heard, I mean, it's all you can think about for the most part, probably as the plaintiff, as the person who's injured. If you just feel like a number, that's not a good feeling.
Yeah, I'm reminded of what my wife always tells me. Sometimes I don't want you to solve my problem. Sometimes I just want you to listen. And as a man,
Yeah,
as an attorney,
I've
as
heard that too.
yeah, we have the tendency to want to fix problems and solve people's issues and come to a solution. But many times, and me included, we just want to be heard. We just want people to listen to us. We just want people to understand us, and we're not necessarily looking for a solution. So when the clients are speaking to the big firms and the communication is falling through the cracks, that's oftentimes something that they are frustrated with, that they're not being heard. No one's listening, and you can't listen if you don't pick up the phone. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good way to put it. As we finish up, if someone's looking for a lawyer, whether it's regardless of size, big firm, law firm, a small firm, medium, doesn't matter. What types of things do you think that they should uh, focus on, that they should look for, or certain signs as to if this is the right lawyer for them?
Yeah, I always tell people that the first step you want to take is start talking to your circle of trusted friends and family. Have you ever had a personal injury case? If so, how was your attorney experience? Was it a big firm? Was it a small firm? How do you think that affected you? We as human beings, we trust the people around us implicitly with major decisions in our lives, and that's a phenomenal starting point. And it doesn't matter if it's a big firm or a small firm. I'd want to know how I was treated. Was I told the truth? Did my attorney ever lie to me? Did my attorney ever try to cover something up? Did my attorney call me back when I left a voicemail? I mean, we're talking about some of the most basic principles of representation of an attorney and client. And it's the attorney-client privilege that we talk about in conversations, but it really is a privilege to be an attorney representing a client. And I find that when you speak to friends and family about past experiences, you can figure out very quickly whether or not an attorney took care of you, whether or not an attorney spoke, to you and worked with you rather than worked for you. And I think that's a really nice starting place for a client.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's great advice. All right, well, that wraps up today's episode of Off the Record Personal Injury Litigation with Michael Kopsick. If you'd like to learn more about Michael's work representing injured people, visit law-mwk.com. Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel. Don't miss any of the future episodes. We got lots more great information coming your way. Michael, it's always great chatting with you. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.